Hi, this is Tim Musak. I'm with Bradford Barthel. We're celebrating 20 years of existence this year. We have 13 offices throughout the state with over 100 attorneys. So we make appearances at every WCAB. I am not one of those over 100 attorneys. I am a rater and have been doing exclusively ratings for Bradford Barthel since 2008. My background is in work comp claims. I've also done a fair amount of training and quite a bit of permanent disability rating. Was doing rating training through the Insurance Education Association beginning in 1991. So I've got a little bit of experience in that. Today we're going to talk about commutations, lump sum payments, and commutation calculations. Commutation, Webster Dictionary just says that the definition of commutation is a substitution of one form of payment for another. So that's where the word commutation comes from, substituting a lump sum payment for benefits that are due over a period of time. Labor Code Section 5100 talks about lump sum payments and indicates that the appeals board can commute the compensation payable under this division to a lump sum to be paid forthwith. So the Work Comp Appeals Board technically has to approve it, and the commutations are allowed if it is necessary for the protection of the person entitled to that lump sum commutation or for the best interest of the applicant, and if that commutation will avoid inequity and not cause undue expense or hardship to the applicant. So it should be in the best interest of the injured worker. The two most common times we see, I jumped ahead here. For commutations, Labor Code Section 5101 indicates that you're entitled to some interest credit for commutations. For paying a lump sum payment now for benefits that are due in the future, you're entitled to interest, but it's limited to 3% per year. And you're allowed to take into consideration the probability of the beneficiary's death. And that's built into the DWC DEU's present value tables. They build that in, so it's nothing that we have to consider when we're doing a commutation. It's built into the tables that the DEU puts on their website. So commutations, the two most common reasons for it, a lump sum payment to an injured worker or a lump sum payment to an applicant attorney for the work they did on behalf of the injured worker. And I'm going to start by talking about attorney fees, since one of the more common reasons for commutations, lump sum payments of future benefits, is for attorney fees. I want to talk a little bit about attorney fees. Labor Code 4906 says that attorney fees should be reasonable, consideration given to the responsibility assumed by the attorney and how hard they had to work and the results obtained. The WCAB has a policy and procedure manual, and there's a section that talks specifically about attorney fees. This policy and procedure manual, last time I looked, still had the range of 9 to 12% of permanent disability indemnity. It's my understanding from talking to a number of attorneys that 15% is pretty much the standard on that at this time. The policy and procedure manual also talks about, gives authority to the work comp judge for either increasing or decreasing attorney fees. So it could go up, it could go down. The work comp judge has the ultimate ability to determine what it should be. So my point is the standard appears to be 15%. It's not statutorily set, but that seems to be what is used at this point. So for lifetime benefits, or attorney fees in more general, they're based on a calculation of the benefits that are to be paid to the injured worker in permanent disability and life pension benefits if if applicable, and also potentially temporary disability benefits, medical benefits, any benefits. But most of the time we see it based on permanent disability life pension benefits. When we're talking about a lifetime benefit for the injured worker, such as permanent total benefits or life pension benefits for permanent disability 70% or more, that continuing benefit at the conclusion of PD, COLA projections are necessary to calculate what those total benefits might be. And I say project, we have no way of knowing for certain, but we project what those benefits might be. And the reason we can't know for certain is COLA can change from year to year depending on changes in state average weekly wages. Case law indicates that if we're projecting lifetime benefits, we don't need to project at any more than 3% for COLA application. And that's relevant because that projection is then used to calculate attorney fees. So if we use a higher projection, we're going to be projecting a higher amount of benefits for the lifetime and therefore a higher attorney fees. But at this point, 3% is what the standard is. That still is not set by statute, not set by any regulation, but the current standard is 3% to use for projections for lifetime benefits. The WCAB should be approving attorney fees in any case. So I'm going to go through a real brief review of COLA. We had that in our webinar last month, but a real brief review. COLA is calculated by Department of Labor, average weekly wage reported in the first quarter compared to the prior year first quarter. So the first quarter of this year will be compared to the first quarter of last year, 2016, and sometime in June we'll have that data and we'll know what our COLA will be for January. Right now we don't know. The first quarter of this year has ended. The figures have not been fully tabulated and released, but sometime in June we should know what it will be for next January 1st. COLA increases benefits on January 1st of the year after the beginning of a lifetime benefit, so perm total or life pension, and every January 1st thereafter, based on whatever the current COLA is, for all dates of injury January 1st, 2003 and thereafter. We project at 3%. We don't know what it's going to be for 2018, but if we were trying to project today, we'd use 3%. Same for 2019 and so forth. When we're calculating lifetime benefits, we have to figure what the beginning and ending dates are of that perm total benefit, life pension benefit. And for life pension, to know when that starts, we need to know when the underlying partial permanent disability ends. So we need to do some sort of date calculations. And when we're calculating lifetime benefits, we have to use life expectancy tables. Currently, we're using the 2012 U.S. life tables. Those do not come out on any set schedule. But for this year, the 2012 U.S. life tables, there's a table for male, there's a table for female, and they're different. So when you're projecting lifetime benefits, make sure you're looking at the right one for male or female. With respect to the 3%, this particular case is the one that really kind of set things at 3%. Southern California Edison versus WCAB and LC Martinez. This appellate court decision indicated and affirmed that 3% is really the projection we should use. So, so now we have kind of sort of an idea how we project future benefits for lifetime benefits. How do we calculate attorney fees? Going back to that same case, Southern California Edison versus WCAB, Second Court of Appeals. It's not to be published, which means it's not binding, but this is pretty well where we're at in terms of the legal climate. And future disability payments should not be inflated prior to calculating attorney fees, is what they said. But what it did say is you can projected at 3%. That isn't necessarily inflating. This particular case, it ended up they were doing a permanent total award and calculating a commutation of attorney fees of $347,000, and that was a uniform reduction on that permanent total benefit resulted in a deduction, a weekly reduction of the benefit of $339.89, and that decision says that's just too much. So what has been adopted, again, still not set by statute or regulation, but this is what the DEU says their default method for calculating attorney fees. They will calculate, unless they're asked or instructed to do otherwise, they will calculate 15% of any accrued PD. They say they will calculate a present value of any permanent disability that has not yet been paid, and they will also calculate a present value of any lifetime benefit due in the future, and then take 15% of that present value amount. So that's how the DEU says they will do it by default. I have seen that on lifetime benefits. On perm total or life pension, I have not seen them do present value on permanent partial disability that has not yet accrued, but definitely they do take present value of lifetime benefits. So when you're calculating benefits for lifetime benefits, if you have a life pension award, you have a permanent partial disability value underlying that lifetime benefit of life pension. And every permanent partial disability value has a fixed number of weeks based on the date of injury. It has changed historically based on date of injury. The weekly benefit rate is based on the average weekly earnings, the date of injury, and the level of permanent disability. And again, that has changed over the years, so you want to make sure you're checking the correct dollar charts, the correct permanent disability dollar charts. Lifetime benefits, if there's a permanent disability award of 70% or more, that injured worker is going to be entitled to lifetime benefits. If it's less than 100%, that lifetime life pension benefit is due after the partial disability is paid. If it's a perm total, it's a lifetime benefit starting initially at the TTD rate. For a lifetime benefit, COLA applies for date of injury 1/1/2003 and thereafter. So lifetime benefits are perm total and 70% or more. That's a life pension. So if you're calculating those, you should use some sort of a spreadsheet to help you keep track of the figures you're doing. Some sort of method of date calculation. Excel has available date calculator formulas within their programs. There's also a timeanddate.com, might be dateandtime.com. I regularly transpose those, but there's date calculators on that website as well. When you're doing lifetime benefit calculations, you need to make sure you're projecting the right life expectancy, currently the 2012 life tables, U.S. life tables, and you need to make sure you're using correctly for male or female. So the date of calculation and the date of commutation will affect the benefit calculation and the end date calculation of that for a lifetime benefit. At the bottom of this particular slide, slide 19, is the link to get to the life expectancy tables. Again, that's the current one. There's no standard schedule for when the next one will come out, but for 2017 at least, the 2012 U.S. life table is the one we use to calculate life expectancy. And that's what's needed in terms of calculating your reserves as well for any lifetime benefits. The old Office of Self-Insured Plans requires the 2012 U.S. life table be used for this year. So for a life pension award, we need to know first the underlying PPD award and need to calculate the end date. To calculate the end date, you need to know what the beginning date is. And the beginning date, as has been set by case law, is end of temporary disability or MMI, whichever comes first. Even if benefits don't have to be paid, even if permanent partial disability does not have to be paid for whatever reason, they still accrue. That's still your beginning date. The PPD award will have a number of weeks associated with it. You need to calculate that day it begins, and those number of weeks added to it gives you an end date for the permanent partial disability award. Life pension begins the next day once you've paid out that permanent partial disability award, or once the number of weeks of that permanent partial disability award has been paid. For a life pension rate, it changes based on the level of permanent disability. It goes up. The higher above 70% that award is, the higher the life pension rate will be. And that award, that life pension benefit, will begin after the number of weeks of permanent partial disability award has been exhausted, and will continue through that calendar year at that initial rate. January 1st of the next year, that is affected by COLA. And then again, every January 1st, that COLA, whatever it is at that time, will apply. If we're projecting that COLA, because we don't know what it will be in the future, we use 3% for that projection. So if we're calculating permanent total benefits, we're looking at some similar information. Permanent total disability, it begins at the end of TTD or MMI, whichever comes first. That awarded benefit rate, which should be the temporary total disability rate, is payable through that first year, that first calendar year, and then COLA applies every January 1st thereafter. We need to project the life expectancy at the time of the calculation for that person using the 2012 U.S. Life Tables. So now we're going to talk a little more specifically about commutations. Got some links on this slide, number 22. The first link, the Division of Industrial Relations, has commutation templates and instructions. And specifically, that one's commutation templates and instructions is a zip file. You can go to the website and download that and open it up. The bottom link there gives you the 3 present value tables that are needed for commutations. So these are the links to get you to the commutation workbook and instructions and necessary tables. And this particular link, if you go into it, you will find templates and instructions to facilitate the calculation of life pension and permanent disability benefit calculations, commutations. There's rules and regs that it references you to. And if you go into that link, you will get commutation instructions and the table. So these last couple of slides just kind of show you where you will be if you go into the DWC's website looking for these commutations. Also tells you what the different tables are for. Table 1, present value at 3%, issued in January 2001. Table 2 is present value at 3% for a male. Table 3, 3% for a female. Table 1 is used for permanent partial disability, for benefits that have a finite end date, so not lifetime exposure. Tables 2 and 3 are used to do commutations of lifetime benefits. There are built-in life expectancy tables in those worksheets. And so tables 2 and 3 are used for lifetime benefits, perm total or life pension. Table 1 is for permanent partial disability because there's no life expectancy to calculate. It's a fixed, finite number of weeks of benefits. There are 7 different methods of commutation worksheets within that one commutation workbook, and they're numbered. EXA, B, C, D, E, F, G. So I guess that's not numbered. They're lettered. The first 3 are used for the fixed number of weeks, permanent partial disability. The last 4 are used for lifetime benefits. There is not one specific to perm total, but the life pension ones are lifetime benefits, and that can be used to do perm total commutation calculations. The 2 most common commutations requested and approved are off the far end. So that's taking a lump sum payment and taking that value of that lump sum payment off the far end of the award so that the award will be paid out sooner. And then by uniform reduction. What uniform reduction does is it takes some off of every weekly benefit. So the benefit will continue. It will just have a lesser amount of that weekly benefit. It will continue through the end of that benefit, whether it's perm partial disability or a lifetime benefit. And there may be, and usually are, separate commutations for a life pension case. There usually is a separate commutation for the permanent partial disability and a separate one for the life pension. And the separate calculations for what those benefits will be for each portion of the award, and a separate award of attorney fees for each. And they're often commuted differently. One thing to note is that if there's a commutation of PD is off the far end, that means that the PD benefits going to the injured worker are going to end sooner because you paid a lump sum now to the attorney. So if there's life pension benefits following, there's going to be a gap between the end of PD and the beginning of life pension benefits. And that's because the award for permanent disability or the award for life pension is to begin at the conclusion of the weeks paid. It's not the money, it's the weeks paid. So if you do a off the far end, you're going to have a gap before life pension. And I'm going to show some examples of that as we go a little bit farther here. But now I just want to show what the tables look like that I mentioned. There's lots and lots of numbers on here. So this is table 1. There's several different columns here, but there's a weeks and then a present value. Okay? And table 1 is used for permanent partial disability, so not a lifetime benefit. And table 1 continues, and table 1 continues some more. So you can go all the way forward to 950 weeks. I'll show you how we use these. There's lots of numbers, but it's a little simpler to use than you might think by looking at it. Table 2, present value life pension for a male. Table 2 and Table 3 are used for lifetime benefit commutations. If we look at the far left column, age on DOC is date of commutation, and then there's across the top different columns 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's number of years between date of commutation and the commencement of life pension. The commutation worksheet will tell you the number of years, but what that's reflecting is you may not be paying that life pension for 2 years or 5 years or 12 years. So there's different calculations with built-in life expectancy values in these tables. This is page 2 of that table 2. So it goes up to age 95 on the date of commutation. So we don't have a table for a 96-year-old that we're commuting benefits for. This is table 3, present value of life pension for a female. It's set up the same as table 2, but there are some different values for a female because typically a female has a higher life expectancy at the same age than does a male. So these two tables, table 2 and 3, have life expectancy projections built in. I again want to point out this was issued in 2001, and as near as I can tell, there have been no updates, and therefore life expectancy updates, I don't think, have been built into these. So here's page 2 of table 3. Okay. Let's go back to commutations. Which one do we use? Commutation table 1 applies to benefits with a fixed end date. As I said, for permanent partial disability, there's a fixed number of weeks associated with whatever the level of permanent partial disability is. Table 2 or 3 for male or female are for lifetime benefits, so life pension or permanent total benefits. Okay, we're going to do some examples. So we've looked at everything that has to do with commutations. Now we're going to see if we can figure out how they work or show how they work. So I'm going to use this for my example. A date of birth of 2/7/1963, a date of injury of 2/2/2013, and 2 years later, permanent disability begins 2/2/2015, and average weekly earnings of $1,500. And for this example, we're going to use for a male. So as of today, that is a 54-year-old male. So we're going to use that data for our calculation. So we're going to do a commutation, and we're going to use the date of commutation. It's an important consideration, the date of commutation. I mean, you might not know it, but it is. It's an important consideration. We're going to use 5/3/2017. Today we're 4/26/2017, so projecting about 2 weeks out. The date of commutation should reflect the date where you think you're really going to get a check out. If you're doing a commutation, really should kind of reflect that, because the commutation is calculating interest savings in a way, and that interest savings is based on how far into the future you're going to pay your lump sum benefit now. So these are the 3 examples we're going to use. We're going to look at one where there's a 40% permanent disability award, and the WCAB has approved a $10,000 lump sum to the injured worker, and we're going to be able to take that commutation off the far end. Example number 2, we're going to look at a 60% award, attorney fees of 15% off the far end. And example number 3, we're going to look at an 85% permanent disability award, and because it's 70% or more, there's a life pension on that. And we're going to look at an example on that, attorney fees off the far end. We'll also look at attorney fees off for the PD off by uniform reduction, and then attorney fees by uniform reduction off life pension of that same award. So here's the first one. 40% permanent disability is 201 weeks at 230 a week. That 201 weeks begins 2/2/2015. That's when TTD has ended. And the 201 weeks added to that gives us 12/10/2018. With no attorney fees, we're going to lump sum has been awarded, lump sum commutation has been approved for $10,000 to the injured worker off the far end. So here's the top of that worksheet that we would use, the commutation worksheet, and it's EXB from that workbook. And it's titled there. This is all copied from the top of that particular worksheet. Commutation of PD off the far end. Date of commutation, well, first I put in date of injury. Permanent disability starts 2/2/2015. Date of commutation, said we're going into the future a little bit. We're not going to get a check out until May 3rd. Rating is 40%. We've got to put in the number of weeks, 40% for that date of injury, 201 weeks, and the rate for that permanent disability and that date of injury is 230. We're going to commute $10,000. That data goes in there, and you get, this is the bottom of that same worksheet. I hope you can see it. There's lots of stuff on there. It looks intimidating, but there's very little really that you need to fill out. The gray area is where you fill out. So on, if you can see it, section 2, present value of weeks of permanent disability remaining after DOC. DOC is date of commutation. Just make sure you're getting a correct, reasonable date of commutation put in there because it's calculating that. So section 2, the formula will give you 2A, 84 weeks. It will give you 2B, 83 weeks on those two lines. What you need to then look at, it tells you down at the very bottom of the table, take values from table 1, present value permanent disability. So from table 1, you look up the value of 84 weeks and then the value of 83 weeks, and you fill in the present value, the PV numbers. And that's what they are, 81.9862 for 84 weeks, and for 83 it's 81.032. If you put those in and enter, it's going to calculate down through section 5, the worksheet will. And section 5, line 5C, number will come up from the calculations, 38.0992. Section 6 tells you to enter PV and corresponding number of weeks for PV just above 5C. 5C is 38.0992, so just above that is 39, whole number. Line 6B asks for the PV, number of weeks for PV just below 5C. Well, that's 38. What this is doing is it's a built-in rounding factor for this commutation worksheet. So we go back to table 1, and for 39 weeks we put in the PV, 38.5502. For 38 weeks we put in the PV, 37.5726. And we hit enter, and that's all the calculation, that's all you have to put in on this. I mean, it looks intimidating, but that's the extent of what you have to do. Table 1, and fill in those two gray areas. It gives you data then, and the data it gives you is specifically what we want to look at is 8, section 8. Determine the number of weeks eliminated from the far end of the award, and 8C tells us that has taken 45.0327 weeks off the far end of the award. Section 9 gives us $2.74. That's additional interest for each day late. So technically what that is saying, if you don't pay that lump sum on 5/3, which is our date of commutation, and you don't want to recalculate, you add another $2.74 to the injured worker in some fashion for every day after 5/3 before you get that check out. So slide 40, this is everything you need to fill out. That's all you need to fill out on that sheet. That's all we did was that bit. Section 2A, 2B, we filled in the number of weeks. 6A, 6B, we filled in the number of weeks and the PV. I'm sorry, 2A, 2B, we didn't fill in the number of weeks, just the PV associated with the number of weeks. Here's the portion of the table. We took from the 84 and 83, and we took from the 38 and 39. Okay. So here's the data that it gives us that it isn't totally clear, but we can take from the data that that form gives us. It tells us the number of weeks elapsed through date of commutation is 117.4286. I'm going to back up to that table and we'll look at that. So on 1C, the top of this slide, 117.4286 weeks elapsed through date of commutation. I'm going to go back. So what that means is this is how many weeks of permanent partial disability has accrued by the time your date of commutation rolls around. So that means multiply by 230 weeks. The formula doesn't do that. I did that. It's $27,008.58 is what has been accrued by the date of commutation. You're putting in $10,000 for commutation, and it tells you that's 43.4783 weeks. PD still owed after the date of commutation, 8863.90, and weeks eliminated, 45.0327. So here's how you can calculate your interest savings. It doesn't spell it out on that form, but here's how you can do it. Weeks eliminated is 45.0327, 230 a week gives you 10,357.52. That's what's eliminated off the far end. You're paying $10,000 up front. So in this case, you're getting a $357.52 interest credit. What is more relevant is that 45 weeks are eliminated from the award, so PD will now end January 28th, 2018, rather than December 10th, 2018. So you're paying that $10,000 up front, getting $357.52 interest credit, and your permanent disability will end January 22nd, 2018. Example number 2, 60% PD. For that same date of injury, 351.25 weeks, 270 a week. 15% of that 94,000 award is 14,225.63. That 60%, 351.25 weeks should run from February 2nd, 2015 to 10/27/2021. So that's just adding 351.25 weeks to 2015. We're going to commute this off the far end as well. So here's we're using the same worksheet, B, commutation of PD off the far end. We have the same date of injury, same PD start date, same date of commutation, all for the same example. Permanent disability rating is 60%. This calculator doesn't do anything with that 60%. It's just there for data. Number of weeks, it does do something with that. So 351.25, it's important you get that accurate. weekly rate of 270. It's important you get that accurate. And amount to commute, 14,22563. It's important to get that accurate as well. So the same sheet we used on that $10,000 lump sum to the injured worker, we've got some different numbers come up. 1F, weeks remaining, take that back. 1C, weeks elapsed through date of commutation. It's the same. We're using the same example, same start date, same date of commutation. 2A tells us the number of weeks. It automatically fills that in from 1F. We have to go to table 1 to get the corresponding PV numbers in the gray for 2A and 2B. It does calculations down to 5C. There's 166.1854. We need to know what that is to go to section 6. 6.8, we go the number right above, so 166.184. So it's 167 weeks and 166 weeks. Back to table 1 to the PV values associated with those weeks, and it does the rest for us. It tells us that the weeks eliminated on 8C is 59.1969, and if we're late, if we don't get that checkout on May 3rd, we either recalculate or we add another $390 a day back to the injured worker in some fashion. So here's the data we've got. 8C tells us is what we need to kind of figure out what our interest savings is, because we really want to know that. Weeks eliminated at the far end are 59.1969 times the 270 a week benefit for this particular case. So a total of 15,98316 in benefits has been taken off the far end. 14,22563 is what's going in lump sum to the applicant attorney. The difference is 1,757.53. That's our interest savings. And more importantly, permanent disability ends 59.1969 weeks earlier. So PD will end September 7th, 2020, rather than 10/27/2021. Example number 3. This one we're looking at 85%. So we have a life pension. 85% gives us $290 a week, 673.25 weeks, 0.25 weeks. So that 673.25 weeks added to 2215 should get us to 12/28/2027. Total of $195,242.50. So life pension begins the next day, 12/29/2027. And figuring the life expectancy, 26.4 years from the date of commutation, brings us to 9/12/2043. And if we do the projections of 3%, we come up with about $204,575.58 is what we project for life pension benefit for those additional years. So we get 2 separate awards. For the PD, 85%, straight 15% of that, let's assume, which is 29,286.38. And let's look at it off the far end. For life pension, COLA projected a life expectancy for the life expectancy at 3% annually. I don't have a present value calculator. I took this from Work Comp Central's website, or used their calculator. For a present value of the life pension benefit is 138,663.15 according to their calculator. 15% of that is 20,799.47. And I'm showing you this because this is what you should expect, something similar to this from the DEU and to be approved by the judge for attorney fees on a lifetime benefit calculation. Should be a calculation projected at 3% annually for COLA for the life expectancy, a present value taken of that, and then 15% of that present value. That's That's the standard that the DEU says they will use. It's not statutorily required, but that's the standard. So if we look at life pension, almost always, I have to say always, I've not seen it other than by uniform reduction of deferred life pension. So here's the first part, the PD, that same worksheet, commutation of PD off the far end, B, all the same data on the left-hand column, but the right side, permanent disability rating is 85%. We got the number of weeks associated with that. The weekly rate of $290, that's important to be accurate. And the amount to commute, that's the PV, 15% of the present value. So that's the attorney fee. We got similar situation here. 1C tells us weeks elapsed through date of commutation. It's the same. We started the same day, same date of commutation. So that's the same on all three of these because we use the same data. 1F tells us weeks remaining. We don't necessarily need to do that, but it gives us the 555.8214. It fills in on section 2, 556, 555. We go to table 1 and get those correlating PV numbers. Calculates through 5C, gives us 375.5614. So we take that and do the first number above and the first whole number below in section 6 and the correlating PV values, and it gives us down on 8C, weeks eliminated from the far end, 133.9167. Again, if we don't get it out timely, there's additional interest due back to the injured worker. So here's how that works. We can calculate our interest savings by looking at the weeks eliminated, 133.9167 times the weekly rate of $290. So 38,835.84 is taken off the far end, minus the attorney fee lump sum payment that's going now. So that's your interest savings is $9,549.46. Most relevant to the injured worker, permanent disability will end June 4th, 2025 using this. And a life pension doesn't begin the next day. Labor Code 4659 talks about life pension is to be paid after payment for the maximum number of weeks. So it does not move up. So therefore, life pension still begins 12/29/2027, and you got 133.9167 weeks between the end of PD and the beginning of life pension. So no benefits due for that period of time, June 5th, 2025 through December 28th, 2027. And then you begin the life pension benefits. That's a pretty significant gap, but there's an alternative. It's not used very often, but maybe it should be. You can do PD by uniform reduction, and that's EXC from the workbook, commutation of PD by uniform reduction. All the same data goes here on the top. On the bottom, we just have one thing to fill in, and what it does give us in section 4 is the new PD rate. It tells us the weekly PD rate, which is what we put in the header, is $290 a week. It did some calculation saying that we would subtract the uniform reduction would be $61.46. So the new rate after that reduction, $228.54. And so what that means is that injured worker will continue to get benefits, although at a reduced rate, until the life pension begins. So that might be, went back one, that might be a more palatable alternative than going over 2 years without benefits, getting a $228.54 a week, continuing until life pension begins. So there's two potential ways to do that permanent partial award. And it doesn't have to be just for a lifetime. The by uniform reduction is valid on using any permanent partial disability award. But if there's a lifetime benefit coming subsequent to that, it might be of interest to the injured worker to have a continuing benefit. So here's how that worked out. $290 a week, $61.46 is a reduction, and $228.54, no gap in life pension benefits. Now we'll look at the present value of life pension. So again, with $20,779.47, and we figure would be the life pension attorney fees. Specific to that, life pension for that amount for 85% PD would be $193.27 a week, $673.25 weeks for the 85% PD award. We need to fill in its mail for this particular one. For the lifetime benefit commutations, we need to know male or female. There's built-in calculators in the sheet. So here's what we get. We get section 3 gives us PV of 54, deferral period 10, 400.7, and then 3B, 55 for the age and deferral period of 10, 382. These are just filling these in gives some rounding ability to these formulas. Then in section 3G, there's another piece we need to fill in there. That's all it needs to be filled in on this particular worksheet, and those are taken from table 2 for a male. Lifetime benefits, you look up the present value for the age on the date of commutation, and in section 3, that's what that is, 54 and 55. This person is between 54 and 55 on the date of commutation. And the deferral period of 10 years, which means that life pension isn't scheduled to begin for 10 years. And you fill in just those gray areas. That's all that needs to be filled in. Section 5 tells us this. $193.27 is the initial rate. The weekly reduction, the uniform reduction, is $55.41. So that initial life pension rate then is reduced to $137.86 to the injured worker. Here's the part we needed to fill out. Present value from age of date of commutation and deferral period. So just those sections, it's all that needs to be filled out on that piece. And here's what that tells us. Section 4C says here's the 55.41 is what the uniform reduction is. With this, that's year 1 life pension rate is $137.86. January 1st of the next year, in this case, January 1st, 2028, COLA applies. COLA applies to the full amount of the life pension rate, not the reduced rate. So the 3% would be projected off the $193.27, which is the full rate. So you would still subtract $55.41. And that's how that would work. So you don't apply the COLA to the $137.86. You apply the COLA to the $193.27 and subtract $55.41 to calculate what goes to the injured worker. And it looks like this. So your 3% weekly rate calculation, it increases every year, projected. We don't know for sure. But every year we subtract $55.41. So the rate goes up, and $55.41 continues to be taken off of that. Commutations. There are some limitations to it. I think we looked through and saw it's not quite as hard as it might look, but there are some limitations to it. Issued in 2001, and without any apparent updates as far as I can tell. Table 1 is present value for current benefits. It ends at 950 weeks, 18.27 years, so there's a limitation there. Present value, or tables 2 and 3, it's not complete. 89% PD for a 2005 date of injury or later comes to 737.25 weeks. So if you have 89% or more, tables 2 and 3 really might not give you all the information you need. But less than that, it has plenty. You can request commutations from the DEU. You don't have to do your own. I don't know what their turnaround is on that in terms of how long it takes them, but there's a link to a DEU commutation request, and this is what it looks like. One thing I want to point out on this is the right-hand column, a little bit, maybe a third of the way down, annual state average weekly wage increase, if applicable. If you leave it blank, the DEU will use 3%. There's no need to leave anything, to recommend anything other than 3% for a lifetime state average weekly wage / COLA increase. I will do commutations for you if that's something that you're interested in with our regular Bradford Barthel rating referral form. There's nothing on there for commutations, but you can send one of those in. Don't need all the same information, but send one of those in or contact me by email and we can work something like that out. And with that, that's what we have for commutations. I'm going to see if we have some questions. If you'd hold on just a moment. I have 2 questions, I'm told. Would you please? Uh-huh. I'm being asked about a death claim, the calculated value at $800,000 plus, that would be paid till the youngest dependent minor turns 18 sometime in 2033. So we do a commutation. What would the value be? With respect to that, you can do the, since you have a fixed date for when that's to end, you'll have to do some calculations how many weeks that is from your date of commutation. But you can do that on A, B, or C. I don't remember which one of those worksheets. You can do a commutation from that. Your date of commutation, if I'm understanding the question correctly, the date of commutation that you use on that calculation should be similar, should be close to the day you're actually going to get a check out. So you can do some calculations in advance to get an idea of what it would be. But when you're getting close to actually making the payment, the date of commutation should be close to the actual date a check will go out. I hope that answers the question. Life, I'm asked about uniform reduction on a life pension. Will that life pension reduction continue? Yes, the reduction continues. And let me just clarify that uniform reduction doesn't mean that's going to the applicant attorney now. That's still the lump sum going to the applicant attorney now is what that calculation shows. So that amount of attorney fees goes now. So, and to accommodate that uniform reduction is calculated through the life expectancy of that injured worker. That commutation worksheet has built-in life expectancy calculators and takes that into account. So that uniform reduction goes for lifetime on a lifetime benefit. And I think that is the questions that I have right now. And so thank you all very much.